Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 198 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Dexcom, makers of the G6 continuous glucose monitor, and by the only self-contained tubeless insulin pump on the market, Omnipod. You can go to myomnipod.com/juicebox to get a free, no-obligation demo today, or go to dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more about getting started with the G6. Today, something kind of odd is going to happen on the podcast. It's small, but it's odd. I'll be speaking with Michelle. She's the mom of a type 1 diabetic. She's also part of a 4-person family, her husband, and 2 small children, who moved from Minnesota to Prague to teach overseas. But in Prague, the Czech Republic. And on last week's episode, we spoke with Elena, who was from the Czech Republic. I promise this was not on purpose. It is, however, incredibly strange, as I don't know how I ended up with 2 people on the podcast in consecutive weeks who are either from or living in the Czech Republic. Anyway, I just found that really interesting. The odds must be pretty stacked against me. I can't imagine there are that many people in the Czech Republic listening to the podcast. But obviously, there are a few. And don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should ever be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before being bold with insulin or making any changes to your healthcare plan. Go ahead and introduce yourself any way you want to be known, and we'll just jump right in.
Okay. I'm Michelle Legault. I'm the mother of a type 1 5-year-old, and we're originally from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we travel the world, and we are in Prague right now.
Very nice. Now, Michelle's did you see her? I'm going to leave in where I asked her to introduce herself because the little laugh afterwards, because she was like, what are we going to talk about? You should send me some notes. And I'm like, nah, it'll be okay. Don't worry. And I know you're like, what's going to happen? But I hope it makes you feel better to know that I don't also know what's going to happen. So it'll be good. You reached out, just because you have all this incredible experience with traveling with type 1 and being overseas and having to use insurance and get medical supplies and everything like that. And so I think that's a really cool topic. How did you end up leaving Minneapolis for the world?
Well, we applied with a missionary organization in the summer of 2016, or I guess in the spring. But we just felt like this is where we're supposed to be right now. So, I mean, for us, this was a very unique calling, I think. Within 4 months of applying, we had all the funding that we needed, and we were on a plane to Prague. Wow. So, yeah, but our mission organization is based in the U.S. So the tricky thing is that we still have U.S.-based health insurance, but we're living here.
Okay.
So one hard thing is if we're getting equipment or certain supplies, we still have to go through U.S. companies, even though we're not located there and we don't have an embassy mailbox here where they could ship to. So that would be one caveat, is if you are with the military or the embassy, then those companies will ship to you. But otherwise, you have to use a U.S. mailing address. So that has made things a little bit tricky. But we've made it work for 2 years. So.
And so somebody on the U.S. side has to then get your supplies and then send them to you.
Well, actually, before we left, we explained to our insurance what was happening, and we were able to get 2 years' worth of pump supplies to bring with us.
Wow.
So we had 3 suitcases full of stuff that we brought with us.
Diabetes stuff. That's crazy. Okay, so all right, let me make sure I understand everything. So it's you, it's your daughter, right?
Yeah.
And she's 5, and a husband, I'm assuming?
Mm-hmm.
And then any other kids?
We have one other. Yep, he's 2.5.
2.5. So, oh, wow, 2.5. So you were pregnant when you left?
No. He was 9 months old.
Okay.
Maybe 6 months. I don't know.
Gotcha.
He was born in November. We left in August.
Oh, math. Obviously, this is something you guys wanted to do. You were on your way. And you had the diabetes was in your life when you made this decision and you left. How long did she have diabetes before you guys did this?
2 years before. Okay. She was diagnosed in August of 2014. She was 16 months old. And so and we got the pump almost immediately. She only did injections for 2 months, and then we got the insulin pump because her doses that she needed were very, very small at the time.
Yeah.
So the pump really allowed us to give her those minute doses, which was great. And so, after 2 years, if you live with something for 24 hours a day and you're managing it that way all the time, you become familiar with it pretty quickly.
Yeah. No,
so after 2 years, we still encounter new situations, even now, and we're almost, I don't know how many years is that? A lot of years. 4 years in, we still encounter new situations, but after 2 years, we had seen a lot of things and we felt comfortable moving.
Wow.
So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Are you adventurous like this before all this? Were you always somebody who was like, let's just try this?
Well, we moved to Minnesota the day after our wedding, so I guess you could call that adventurous. Got in a car and we were gone. So
that's a lot of effort to avoid writing thank you notes, Michelle.
Yeah.
All right, suckers, goodbye. I imagine in my mind your daughter got diabetes, and you're like, I'm going to go to Prague. You all stay here. And then they just glommed onto your idea and chased you over there, because I felt like running away a couple of times during the first couple. No, of course not.
We were actually thankful that was the diagnosis at the time, because we had seen her get sick, and we had asked the doctor. I had asked point blank, could it be type 1 diabetes?
Mm-hmm.
And I was told no, because her weight was good. She had just had a 15-month checkup. And they said, oh, no, her weight is good. And, type 1 is autoimmune. If she was autoimmune, she would have been sick with other things. And she'd never been sick. She'd never even had a fever. And so they said, there's no way that she's type 1. And so they just didn't even test her.
That's an interesting way to approach it.
And she was, and she had a lot of diaper yeast at the time. And so at the 15-month checkup, the pediatrician had said, oh, well, that can be a sign of autoimmune, but she's so healthy that, I don't think it's that at all. He said, you just need to change her diaper more.
Look how round and plump she is. It's all fine. My medical diagnosis. That's really weird.
I think kind of anti-daycare. My husband and I worked full-time at the time, and so our daughter was in daycare 4 days a week, and I just got the feeling that our pediatrician didn't really agree with that choice, because he was just kind of blaming the daycare, saying, oh, well, obviously they're not changing her enough,
Oh, okay.
And we loved the ladies that took care of our daughter, and we did not feel that they were doing an inept job at all. So we really fought with him on that. And then in the summer, we even let her go around without a diaper at all and just with a dress on, and even still, she had to have nystatin or she would have a yeast infection. And that went on for a few months. And then after her 15-month checkup, I went online and thought, well, there has to be something else we can do, And so then I read an article that said that this could be a symptom of type 1 diabetes. And I thought, well, let's not call the National Guard. This is one thing, so we'll wait and we'll see if any other symptoms develop. But I said something to my husband at that time, and I said, well, do you think it could be type 1? And he said, no, that would be so weird. And then she started to really heavily wet her diapers. I mean, every one of them was just 10 pounds heavy, just so heavy, completely saturated, hanging off her. And it was every hour. And we were about to go on a trip for our wedding anniversary, and we were going to take her with us. And I called the doctor again, and I said, okay, well, now she also has these really heavy diapers. All the time we're changing her. And I described how heavy and how often. And they said, well, it's summer. She's just drinking a lot. And I said specifically, could it be type 1 diabetes? She also has these diaper rashes.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, no. We looked at her chart. Her weight is good. She's very healthy. But nobody told me, and I didn't look into it enough, nobody told me the risks of her being undiagnosed in type 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when we came back from our trip over the weekend, then she got violently ill. She was in DKA. She ended up in pediatric intensive care, and we switched pediatricians. I was livid.
I've never heard a doctor base everything on your weight being okay.
With very, very small children, I don't know how old Arden was at diagnosis, but I've heard this from other parents too.
Mm-hmm.
If their child is still getting their, checkups during their first year or 2 years of life when they're really little and they go in all the time, they base a lot of their health on weight. healthy weight means a lot. And so that with Winnie, that was definitely true. They thought, well, her weight is good. But then they also kind of paired that with the fact that I think they have this misassumption that if you're type 1, it's autoimmune. So you're going to just be prone to all these illnesses, which with our kids is not true at all. Our youngest is the one who really gets sick and is affected by colds and everything so much more. And Winnie has still never had any kind of prescription for anything, like no bronchitis, no pneumonia, nothing.
Right. I always see with Arden, she's, aside of diabetes, Arden's incredibly healthy and doesn't get sick almost at all. Yeah. Probably because her immune system's probably too good, which is probably how it beat up and killed her pancreas. And,
Maybe. Yeah. That's a theory. Yeah. Who knows?
And I'm very similar. If I get sick, I'm sick for 4 hours. It just happened to me a week or so ago. Like I said to my wife, I'm like, I don't feel well and I'm going to lay down now. It was like 8 o'clock at night, and at midnight I opened my eyes and I was like, oh, I'm all better. And it just, that's just, I don't know. You have that's a very, very strange story.
So anyway, so you were talking about running away
yes.
at diagnosis or feeling that way. But so for us, we felt very thankful that this was her diagnosis and that it was something that we could manage, because just in those last couple days when she got really sick, and it happened very, very quickly, we didn't know what to do with her. And we were so worried about her. And when she was in DKA, I mean, it was the scariest thing ever. And we were so thankful that we can manage type 1 and that she can live a completely normal, healthy life apart from this one thing, that she has to deal with. And it's not that it's easy, but it's doable, right? And that's the blessing in it, is that it's doable. And we were so glad that we could do a week of training at the hospital and do all these classes and go home and figure it out. So,
well, your mind must have really wandered when she ended up in the hospital, right? Like before because everybody's been telling you it's not diabetes every time you've brought it up. Did you wonder what else it might be? Did you let your imagination get the best of you then, or did they give you an answer pretty quickly?
I didn't. I just kept looking for more symptoms of type 1, thinking, well, it's, I just kept watching for the list of symptoms that I'd read online. And then when something new would present itself, I would say, oh, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're wrong. And then the day that she threw up, when I brought her into the pediatrician, I said, test her blood sugar. I want to, I want you to see if it's diabetes. So I don't know. I still kind of had that, idea. But like I said, I definitely didn't research it enough. And no one warned me. None of the nurses I talked to, the pediatrician, nobody told me what would happen if she was type 1, her pancreas was shutting down and it wasn't taken care of. And nobody told me, that we could have just brought her to someone with a meter, or we could have bought a meter at the pharmacy to check her, and how insurance works. You don't always know what you're going to pay at the doctor. And if they tell you don't need to come in, you're like, okay, I guess I won't. And
it's a very hard situation to be aggressive in.
Well, and we didn't know what the test was. And so I was thinking, I don't want to be one of those parents who orders an unnecessary, invasive test for my kid. They didn't tell me it was just a finger prick. Nobody said well, it's so easy, just bring her in just to be sure.
Yeah.
And we were not the kind of parents who called wolf all the time. We never came in unless it was a regular checkup. So I still can't believe that nobody looked into anything any further. It's not like we had this history of calling in all the time for silly little things.
Right.
We had a concern and we had reasons for our concern, and we kind of got brushed aside because they had this chart that said she was healthy, healthy based on her weight.
And it's funny because you had it figured out a couple of times too. You really
we asked a couple of different people.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, but.
Has that affected how you do things now? Are you more aggressive, I guess, in situations like that anymore? Or?
I don't know. I think I'm aggressive anyway. So I don't think I need to be more aggressive. I think I'm aggressive enough. But I think we're more picky now about our pediatrician for sure. We definitely like to be in someone's care who advocates for, finger sticking or blood testing, or someone who will look into those things. And I think being here in Prague, we've noticed, or at least I've noticed, I'm in a group for moms of type 1 kids here. And I've met so many more people whose children were diagnosed at a young age than I ever met in Minneapolis. Like so many more. It's really incredible. So I think we've seen they're a lot more cautious here with healthcare.
I got you.
And everything is so much cheaper. So
just do it.
You don't have these prices hanging over your head if the doctor says like, oh, I want to, run this test or look into this thing for you. You're not worried right away about prices.
The Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitoring system is now FDA permitted for 0 finger sticks. That means you can make treatment decisions based on your Dexcom. And if you don't believe the FDA, believe me, because I just did it 5 minutes ago with Arden. Arden's been at school all day. As she left for school in the morning, her blood sugar was 120 and it was starting to rise. Then we gave her a temp basal increase and bolused. The blood sugar actually went to 140 and hung there for about 30 minutes before we started to get it to come back down. 8 o'clock, 8:30, got it back down under 120, 110, and eventually around 9 a.m., it leveled out around 92. Stayed there for an hour and a half. She's got an early lunch today, so about 10:20 she texts me and says, hey, I'm going to be going to lunch soon. I looked up, saw the trend on the Dexcom graph, saw what her blood sugar was, 92, and I said, okay, let's do a temp basal increase of 40% for an hour and a half, and bolus 14 units. We're going to extend it. Let's do 50% now and 50% over the next hour. It's now 25 minutes later, and Arden's eating. Her blood sugar is 98, and it is stable. And if by chance we've made some sort of an error with her bolus and it starts to go up or down, we'll be able to make adjustments on the fly because of the information coming back from her CGM. And how am I doing that? Because it has the share feature, and I can see it at home while I'm talking to you while Arden's off at school. Share and Follow is available for Android and Apple. These are our results. Yours may vary. Check out dexcom.com/juicebox with links in your show notes or at juiceboxpodcast.com to find out more. What was her blood sugar when she went to DK?
She was over 500 on the meter that they had at the pediatrician's office, but I don't know. I don't think they told us at the hospital, and
Okay.
It was.
No, it's fine. I was just wondering how far it got because she was tiny, right? So.
Yeah. So everything happened really rapidly, and I've read some studies too. Like there's a study out of the UK done on small children who are diagnosed with type 1, and they talk about how rapidly the symptoms develop. So for Winnie, when she started heavily wetting her diapers, it was maybe like a week and a half, and then she was in the hospital DKA.
That fast. Yeah.
So the diaper yeast was around for quite a bit longer. But then when she started to have more of the classic symptoms that you would recognize in adults or other people, It was like less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that because you make me go through my timeline. And Arden was definitely sick and not feeling well. She was having these intermittent bowel movements, like it was days in between, and they were rock hard. Like there was no moisture to them whatsoever. But when the heavy urination started. It was only a couple days till we were in the hospital.
Right.
Like like that felt like, I guess now that you look back, if that was sort of like that was the last one, Yeah. That's really something. So what are you doing in Prague?
We work for a Christian school. My husband and I both do. And our kids go to Školka here while we're teaching. So that's been interesting. So our kids are like in a school run by these really nice Czech ladies, and so I've learned some of the vocab for diabetes in Czech, which has been interesting. But where Winnie is, the director also speaks English, and Winnie's teacher also knows. She's proficient in English.
Okay.
She's not fluent, but she speaks well enough that we can communicate. So that was important to us, especially in the beginning.
Sure.
We toyed around with the idea of putting her in a complete Czech environment for next year. But you kind of run into the same issues that you do in the U.S. with really little ones in type 1, where the schools aren't always prepared to take them. They don't have a system in place because your kid might be the first one they've ever seen.
Yeah.
So we didn't know anybody in our immediate vicinity who has a type 1 kid Winnie's age in school. So there wasn't anything recommended to us. And I looked into a few and nothing really struck me. So she'll stay where she is for next year. But it's good. You know, she's learning the language and doing really well. And they celebrate World Diabetes Day with her in November. The whole school wears blue for her, even the cook
That's so sweet.
at the school. So it's pretty fun. Yeah.
So did you speak any of the language coming in, or did you?
No.
Are you picking it up at all?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I sit in on one of the classes at the high school where we teach. And and then I do the same assignments as the high school kids in the class. So I do that when I have time, and that's fun. It's good.
I can't imagine like picking up a language as an adult. Like it seems.
It's good. It's good for your brain, right? To keep learning new things. And here it's useful. A lot of the government buildings that we go into, people don't always speak English. And so like if I go to the post office, I probably have to speak to them in Czech, or I have to pick a very specific post office, you know, where they're going to be more likely to speak English. And then I'd have to go to the touristy areas that I don't want to go to.
Oh my gosh.
So
is that isolating at all?
A little bit, but you know, I have a group of, you mean like for like a type 1 community?
No, I just in general, like I mean, if I get incredibly bored, I can wander into my backyard and talk to my neighbor. Like, you know, but like, is it like you and your husband and the kids and then you have to go?
Well, the school where we teach, they speak English. You know, It's an English speaking school. So all of our coworkers speak English. Even the ones who teach Czech, they speak English.
Gotcha.
Also. So that way we're kind of in this bubble, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes to go out and to like to go to the post office, for example. If I have to ask them for something new,
right.
I might have to like review I don't know if you can hear Winnie's Dexcom's going off, but oh good. Yeah, I just heard it on my phone. But anyway, I like to go to the post office. I have to prepare myself, you know, for like 30 minutes I'll spend reviewing the words that I need and like, you know, going with a picture of what I want.
How long are you planning on staying? Is it indefinite, or do you have a length of service?
I don't know. Maybe like we'd like to stay for next year. We're coming back for a little bit this summer because we need to fundraise for our 3rd year stay. So
you have to come home and be like, hey, listen, everybody, we're doing good work over here. Somebody needs to pay for it. And
kind of. We've been really fortunate though. We have a pretty awesome support team behind us. So so it's pretty
amazing.
good.
It's actually it's amazing. It's I don't know a lot of people that would do something like that. So I'm a little overwhelmed with what you guys decided to do. Like, wow, that's really great.
Yeah,
it's nice.
Well, yeah, it's totally doable though. It's really great. It's just by God's grace that we're here, and we're just happy to be here and have the opportunity. So, and I think it's important for people to know that they can do things like that. They can move across the world with type 1, and it's okay. It'll be fine. And actually, we were talking about when Winnie goes to college, if she's uninsured at any point, we'll ship her to Europe because you can buy insulin here at the pharmacy without insurance for like $40. Mm-hmm. So we're just like, we're going to send her to Europe if she ever doesn't have insurance. And then we know that she'll have what she needs, because that's one thing we've appreciated about the opportunity to be here is the price of some of the things. So like our durable medical equipment, we still have to get through the U.S., but like we can pay for insulin out of pocket and then our insurance will reimburse us. Okay. And the insulin here is so cheap, we can afford to do that. So I just go to the pharmacy and like glucagon we bought the other day, and it was like $20 for glucagon.
What does a vial of insulin cost you?
Well, I get it like a box. So like an entire box of 5 pen fills was $40.
Oh, that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's I think that's about my copay.
It is.
Yeah, when Arden's insulin comes, I think we get more than 5. We probably get more insulin than that for that money, but still it's...
Right. Well, and it depends on what your prescription is, right?
Right,
so, like for Winnie, 1 box was her monthly need. And so for us, our copay was $40 for the 1 box. But then, if we were the retail price on that, I think I saw at our Target pharmacy one time was like $450. So I never could have walked into the Target pharmacy and bought my insulin without insurance, without the copay. But that's what we do here. I just walk in and I have to have a prescription from the doctor. So that's one difference here. They don't keep your prescription on file at the pharmacy. The doctor will write you a paper slip, and then you go in with it. And then if you want more insulin, you have to go back to the doctor and get another slip. But they'll write you like a 3-month supply. And so we get enough to get us between appointments, and it works totally fine. And he also, our doctor has said, if we ever ran out, we just email him and he'll send us a prescription in the meantime. And our pediatrician here has written us a prescription for insulin because when we first arrived, she was the first doctor that we met. And so you don't even have to go to the endocrinologist. And it was really easy. I mean, I just showed them, I didn't even show them her paperwork from Minnesota. I had it with me, but I just said, she's diabetic. I need her insulin. And they were like, okay, what do you want?
So when you say it's easy, is it more common sense-y? Like less, there's rules and we have to like follow these paths, and more like, well, your kid has diabetes, so sure, take insulin. Is it like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's maybe less bureaucratic. I think in our situation might be a little different because they know that we have like a U.S. prescription. So Winnie's doctor here, she actually sees a diabetologist, not an endocrinologist. They have like this subspecialty underneath endocrinology, like people who deal specifically with diabetes. So her diabetologist, he sticks more to like what her prescription in the U.S. was. But I mean, he doesn't try to rewrite it or recommend anything different. He's like, okay, if this is what you're using and it works for you, I'll just write you the same prescription.
Great. I think it was really great because any of that weight that can get lifted from you honestly makes everything better. Just not having to make these fights. I'll tell you that you and I are talking in May. I don't know when this goes up. It could be months from now, but we just had this, a job change in our life. My wife went from one place to another, and our insurance changed. And so we're starting to get settled, and she's settling in at the job. And about a week in, I said, okay, let's see. Let's get excited. Let's call Dexcom and Omnipod and see if they accept this insurance, because we had been buying through a third party called Edge Park, which is which Edge Park has gotten better over the years, but it's generally speaking a horror. And so people who just came into Edge Park now might be like, it's not bad. And to you, I say, you should have tried doing it 5 years ago. But nevertheless, I called up Dexcom. And they're like, yeah, we take your insurance. And I was like, yay. I felt elated. I was like, this is so exciting. And Omnipod just called me yesterday. And I know what you're thinking. They sponsor the show. Shouldn't I get these pumps for free? No, that's not how it works. I pay for them like everybody else. And so I called up and I was like, here's all my information. Please let me know. And they called me back in just a couple of days and they said, here's what we've learned. Your pumps are going to be 100% free. Do you want to order some now? I was like, really? Like no copay, no I pay you a little bit and I get paid, nothing. Just tell us what you want and they're going to come. And I was like, wow, it was just such a relief, just one less thing to think about, to do, to argue about, to call about, to get an email about. Like I just was really grateful for that, to be perfectly honest. I was like, wow, that's something.
No, that is really good.
Yeah. So I said, my wife got home from work. I was like, Kelly, you can never leave this job. This is the job. In case you're wondering, you have to keep forever.
Yeah.
Just so I never have to call Edge Park again, if for no other reason.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I've been there.
I interviewed someone. Now I'm going to get this wrong. I know I'll pick the wrong one. Is it Czechoslovakia now, or is it Czech Republic? Which is
the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. I interviewed a young girl who's in university in England, but who's from the Czech Republic, and she was talking about how she goes back and forth to get different things, and she wants to, but everything she spoke about was just, I wish I could just stay here in England because it's so easy, and everyone tells me that. Everybody I've ever spoken to from the UK tells me the same thing. Like, it's just very easy to have diabetes here. So
yeah,
it makes you a little sad when they're saying it. You're like, oh. I'm actually on my way in a couple days to some meeting at Novo Nordisk where they want to talk about insulin pricing, and I think I'm going to be a rabble rouser a little bit when I'm in there. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, you could ask them why they charge double what most European countries charge.
Yeah, I'll mention your $40
or not
insulin.
Double, but I mean at least more than that. I mean here I think our price is like 10% of what it was in Minneapolis, but like you were saying, it depends on what your prescription is though too.
Right.
Like because here they charge you by the box. it's not necessarily like your 1 month supply is that copay,
right,
you know,
right.
and then, you know, so, but it's good that it's affordable. It's good,
yeah.
you know, that people can buy it.
Now, I know for us, like, whatever Arden's prescription for insulin is, that's what our copay covers. Right. So if the script says it's 4 boxes, then it's 4. If the script were to say 6 and it's 6, it's still the same price, right?
Yeah, exactly. So your price per box can vary based on what your prescription is, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, generally speaking, in my favor. The more we need.
Right. Yeah. The higher they write the prescription, the better, the farther that copay stretches.
Can you imagine?
The retail price is still the same. You know, like if you were to not have a prescription and have to go in and just buy a box, then you'd pay the retail price. So that's, I don't know.
Well, that's also, I think here, excuse me, for anybody, Michelle and I almost didn't do this because I almost don't have a voice, but excuse me. And there's so many different levels and tiers of insurance here. Like my wife works at a pharma company and she has really good insurance. And so, but you could easily work at that same company and get a different level of that insurance, or work at a different company and have a plan that doesn't come anywhere near, 100% of your durable medical goods and stuff like that. So yeah, it is luck of the draw. A lot of times. It
is. And it also just depends on what your employer has. And, you could be fortunate and get a job for Google. And I don't know how their insurance is, but it's going to be different than somebody who works at a department store, probably.
Yeah.
So they're going to offer different things. And
if you can get with a big enough company who self-insures, then things get easier. And that has definitely been my finding in the past. And I don't know how much people understand that when companies get so big, they really only use the insurance companies to service the insurance. They just whatever it ends up being, whatever the insurance company is, you make a claim, the insurance company pays it, and all the paperwork that happens is like that. But at the end of the year, or a couple of times a year, your company just writes one big check for every dollar that insurance company has sent out. They are financing your health insurance 100% from the company. They're serviced through the company. I don't know if people know that or not, but
now they do.
Yeah, and when you get big enough like that, when you get with a company like that, they generally are more generous. I've found. If you're considering insulin pump therapy, the best way to understand the comfort and convenience of the Omnipod system is to try it firsthand. So try a free, no obligation pod today. That's all you have to do. You can get a demo kit, which includes a sample non-functioning pod, and see what you think. There's absolutely no obligation to buy. You'll get to wear a non-functioning pod to see how it feels. You'll be able to find a spot on your body that works best for you, and then you can feel the freedom you could have with an Omnipod. Try to imagine you're, having lunch. Lunch is a nice meal of the day, don't you think? The sun's out, the birds are chirping, and you're hungry. This lunch you're about to have is a little strange. It's got a little carb heavy, but it's got some simple sugars in it. And you'd like to see the insulin you're giving yourself stretched out through an extended bolus. How do you do that? With a push of a button. The same way you would give yourself a bolus, or change your basal rates, or do any of the things that you need to do with your insulin pump, all wirelessly from the personal diabetes manager. That's right, there is no big unit of thing stuck to you. You are not connected between a tube and this controlling device. This controlling device with the Omnipod, completely wireless. With every other insulin pump, tethered with a tube. Ew. Ick. I mean, unless you like that sort of thing. And then really, I don't care. It's an ad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not judging. Just try an Omnipod. Go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. Check it out today. The free no obligation demo seriously is simple to sign up for. And I think you'll like it.
When he was diagnosed, my husband worked for a corporation, and they had good insurance. So, but she easily could have been diagnosed when we didn't have that policy, and so, yeah. And actually, that's one of the reasons we still have the insurance in the U.S., and we haven't switched over to check insurance, as we think about what if we did move back someday and we want to keep her insured in the U.S. because it's so it's a little bit chaotic. You know, I don't know if you've seen in the news, it's a little chaotic right now, and so we do worry about these protections that are out there for people with pre-existing conditions, and will they stay?
Of course.
You know, will these protections stay, and would we have to worry about her either getting denied a policy, or more likely would, you know, she be charged so much that it would be a burden and be unaffordable for her, you know, which is the more likely scenario, right? Like that's the most likely thing, is that they would take away the protection for people with pre-existing, and that you'd have to pay so much that you couldn't afford.
Yeah, you can have insurance. You can't afford it, but you could have it if you could.
Yeah.
Thanks for your generosity.
Yeah, but you know, that's why we talk sometimes about sending her to Europe for college. Just anywhere where she can just walk into the phamarcy and buy her insulin out of pocket.
Yeah, that's really something. It's so you said you found a community of people with type 1 in Prague. What'd you do? Is there a Prague Facebook? How'd you figure it out? Yeah,
well, I mean, they're on Facebook just like everybody else.
I'm just kidding, but I understand. How did you find?
But, so Czech is a really complex language. It's very, very difficult. And so, and I say that because it makes it hard to find a group if you don't know exactly what the name of the group is, because the way that a word is written can change based on how it's used in a sentence. So like even your name changes based on the structure of the sentence. Oh. So like nothing stays the same. Nothing is sacred. You know, your first name, the name of the city, everything. So you can't just type in the word diabetes in Czech and then expect to find a group. So I contacted the doctor that we were seeing at the hospital here for Winnie's diabetic checkups. And I asked him if he knew of anything, and he recommended a Facebook group to me. And so it's for moms with kids of type 1, but there are some dads in there too. And yeah, and I'm the only, as far as I know, I'm the only American in the group. And as far as I know, also the only native English speaker. I don't think it's a super common thing, maybe. But I don't think it's a super common thing for people to like relocate when their kid has type 1, you know, or like relocate this far, at least to relocate to a different country.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit weird. And I think in our case too, it's weird because we still have our U.S. insurance policy. I think, yeah, for some reasons it would make sense for us to switch to the Czech policy, and then for other reasons we like keeping the U.S. I don't know. It's the system we know. Like we know. Like I don't remember what the terms are for the measurements, but they measure blood sugar differently here. You know, so like here your blood sugar might be 3 or 4 or 5. It's on a different scale. It's like compared to inches and centimeters.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know what off the top of my head.
So I don't. You'll have to look it up, and then you can add that into the podcast.
Oh,
I don't remember what the different scales are, but
I hear from so many people from outside of the U.S. who tell me that they listen to the podcast with a conversion chart, so that when the numbers come out, they can follow along easier. Right.
Well, and I like the U.S. scale better. I think it's more precise because there you have more numbers to work with. You know, like I think to convert, you divide by 18 or something thereabouts. But, you know, with the European chart, they're only measuring to the first decimal, you know. And so you might have numbers like 1 to 20, and that's what you're working with.
Right.
And you might have like 1.1, 1.2, all the way up to 20. But then in the U.S., the equivalent would be numbers like 20 to 400. And so you have so many more numbers you're working with. And I just feel like got to be more precise that way.
Yeah.
And I know that system. That's what we've done for 4 years. Right. So it's hard to want to switch. And then we think, well, how long, if we switched over to European equipment, how long would we have to, like, are we committing to staying here forever then, or for 4 years? Would our insurance let us get a new pump if we move back? I don't know. These are big questions.
I'm starting the timer right now on somebody who's going to email me to tell me that their thing is precise too. You just don't understand it, which I completely believe could be true. So
I'm not saying it's not precise. I just think that one way is maybe a little more precise. I don't understand why they have 2 scales though. I mean, the whole thing is interesting to me. I don't know. Insulin pumps aren't super old technology. Yeah, so. Like, why didn't they just make them all universal? I don't know. Do they want to keep the markets separate? It's a ploy.
You're like, they're just coming for our money.
I know. Well, you think about like how long have meters been around for? Why did they have to make two separate scales? It just seems a little silly. I don't know.
European math people and other parts of the world. I'm assuming the first email I get is from either, I'm going to say South Africa or Australia. That's gonna be. My outlier is New Zealand. I'm thinking that's where one of my emails comes from.
You'll have to let me know.
They're like, you guys are so wrong about that. But I agree with you. At least my interpretation of it. Like I see, like somebody's like, my blood sugar is 2.4, and then I look on the scale and it's within like a 10 or 15 point range on our scale, and I was like, well, that's
right. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's where you get into the preciseness factor and.
Listen, so, maybe what they said was, these meters aren't that accurate anyway. It's around 2.4. Deal with it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's just very interesting. So I think the real story here is that you just sort of bravely stood up and were like, we're going to leave the country now with our little tiny diagnosed kid, and it's going to be fine. And it has been fine, right? There's no, like, you don't have some scary stories, or you didn't run out of insulin on a Prague train from a 1958 black and white movie where some guys with Tommy guns tried to kill you, or nothing like that bad has happened. It's all just been fine. Do you fly a lot? Like back and forth?
I think, no more than anybody else. We probably, here we take the train more than anything, because it's cheaper that way. We've flown, a few times. Since being here, but
whether it's a long train ride,
once a year.
you don't have any compunction about going on a trip with type 1.
No, no, I don't think at all. We brought a lot of insulin with us. We brought at least like a 3 or 6 month supply to get us started, because we were worried about how would we find a doctor? We didn't even know who our doctor would be when we got here, because we didn't know where our flat would be or any of those things. So we brought a pretty big supply with us, and we just put it in a cooler bag with ice packs and refrigerated it as soon as we got here. And all of it was fine. It lasted just fine. So, yeah.
I want to overlay on what Michelle said. Most of the things that you worry about, and I'm talking to everybody listening now, are not things you should be worrying about. It's not that you shouldn't pay attention to it. If you're going to travel, you're going to have to keep the insulin cool. You're going to have to make sure you have everything with you. You definitely don't. I saw somebody online the other day that went on vacation. I have everything except for, and they forgot, I forget what it was, but it was this one important component, in the midst of making themselves crazy and gathering all this stuff together, they forgot the most obvious part of what they needed. And I think sometimes we make ourselves mental about stuff like that. And I can tell you, we've traveled, my family and I travel to the Caribbean. I don't want to say frequently, because it's not frequently, but periodically that's where we vacation. And there is that thought in your head, I do not want to get to this tiny little island and not have something.
Right.
And so I do carry more than I need. If we're going away for a week, I take 10 Omnipods with me. And as I'm putting the 10 in there, the box, and I think that's not going to be enough. And then I go, that's a month's worth of Omnipods. How could that not be enough? One would have to go bad every day, and I'd still have 3 left when I got home. And that's never going to happen. That's never happened in the, 5 years old, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, in the 10 years I've been using Omnipod, nothing like that's even remotely happened. But the minute you add the uncertainty and you're like, but it could. But the truth is, it's not going to.
Right.
And if it does, you have insulin with you and needles. It's not like you couldn't figure it out if something crazy happened.
Yeah. And I think that's the good thing. The people in the type 1 community, they're really good about helping each other. And people are also good about asking for help. When we were on the plane ride over, our flight got delayed, or one of them did, our second flight coming out of New York, and that was our overseas flight. It got delayed, and so my ice packs had started to they weren't. And I was thinking I don't know if they're going to last as long as I thought they would. But we told the flight attendants, I have insulin in this bag, and they brought me extra ice in a bag to add to
yours.
The cooler that I already had. Yeah. So and then with her diabetes supplies, we spread them out across different pieces of luggage in case something got lost. So the pump supplies that we brought, I had a mix of infusion sets and cartridges in each bag, so it's not like I put only one item in each bag. Every bag had an assortment of different items. So if one bag got lost,
a bag,
we'd still have what we needed out of one of those bags, and then we always carry some in a carry-on.
Yeah, I've done that.
We don't, we don't usually check bags because we're not usually gone that long. But definitely when we came here, we had to check bags.
Sure you did, yeah.
So that's where most of her stuff was, but some of it was with us on the plane, just in case everything got lost for a period of time.
Yeah.
If
you're traveling somewhere reasonably modern, you're going to be okay.
That's the thing. Yeah, it just depends on though, like how long will it take them to get to you, and especially here, like a lot of things aren't open on the weekends. Like like the pharmacy is not open on the weekends here.
Okay, you have to.
If you want to go to the pharmacy on the weekend, you have to go out to the hospital, or maybe there might be one in like a shopping mall. But like our neighborhood pharmacy does not have any weekend hours. No Saturday, no Sunday.
Yeah. When I first met my wife, she was leaving to go back to college. It was the summertime, and she was going to go. And I remember I met her at her job, and she's in this office, and she's writing this like massive list. And I was like, "What is that?" And she's like, "Oh, these are the things I need to bring back to school." And I was like, "Where do you go to school? Like on Mars? Like you wrote shampoo on this list. Like, do they not have shampoo where you go to school?" And it was interesting, like. For the first couple moments of the conversation, I was like, is this girl freaked out about like crossing a state line without conditioner? Or like what? And then she just, at the end, she's like, look, here's the truth. Stuff I buy here, my mom pays for. Stuff I buy when I'm at school, I have to pay for it. I was like, oh, okay. You're just trying to get this stuff for free before you leave. I'm like, that I understand. But when I thought she was planning for this like excursion, I was like, you're going to Delaware, not an island in the middle of the Pacific. Like it's, you'll be okay when you get there. And I think that's important to remember. Almost anywhere you go in a modern world, there'll be a pharmacy. There'll be something you can find. It's not like you're going to be in an incredibly emergent situation like that you just can't get your way out of. And if that happens to you, that's pretty random. So it's the worry, I think, that cripples most people. And you don't have that for whatever reason. I haven't figured it out yet, Michelle, but you're very carefree in your mind. It's
I'm not, so we're not as carefree as you think. We plan carefully, right?
Okay.
So like when we applied with this mission organization to go overseas, we explained pretty clearly, like our child has type 1. We need to be near a hospital somewhere. Like we can't go just anywhere. Like we would love to say that we would go to Africa or we would go to some little village somewhere, but we can't do that. So, but like you said, in a modern world, especially those of us who've grown up in a modern world, you feel more comfortable. You don't have to worry so much. You know how to find the things that you need. So we still stayed within that realm. Like we were not ready to leave something like that. And I think if you're an adult with type 1 and you want to do that, that's one thing. But if you're a parent of a child, I think you just feel this like really heavy weight to protect them and to make sure that they're really super safe.
No, I understand that.
And so like we're not going to go to this place that doesn't have refrigerators.
Right.
I've read online about villages where they don't have refrigerators to keep their insulin in, and so they make like clay pots to keep their insulin in to try to keep it cold, but it doesn't stay good long enough because that's not a sufficient replacement for a refrigerator. So we were not willing to take our child into a situation like that because then we feel like we're putting her life at risk, right? And that's not worth it.
Yeah. So the comfort you live with, you helped create by putting yourself in the best situation.
Yeah, we specifically requested to be in a bigger city, and there were a couple of different options that they presented to us that they thought would be a good fit, and Prague was one of those. And so we're only like 30 minutes from the university hospital here, and there are lots of pharmacies right in our neighborhood. There's an airport here, it's a big city.
I got you.
So everything we have or everything we need, we have right here. So so it may seem carefree because we're willing to go all this distance, but it was pretty well thought out and planned, and it took us. We applied in April to come, but we did not decide until the end of May that we for sure wanted to do this. And we did a lot of checking with, like our insurance company and different places to make sure we could have all the supplies we needed and access to everything that we wanted.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. Not everything worked out exactly the way that we thought it would, but like I said, we came with like 2 years of infusion sets and cartridges and things. So
you could have kept her alive till you were done over there and come back again with all the stuff that you brought. So
well, and this summer we're switching to Omnipod because shout out to Omnipod, but we have the Animus pump right now, which, as you know, will no longer be around. And so we had to switch to something new. And so this summer, part of what we're doing is getting a bulk order. Omnipod was amazing. That was one of the easiest transactions I've ever had. And they're getting us 1 year's worth of pods to take back with us because we don't have an address here that they can ship to. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
They're working very hard on getting into, like, they just sent a group of people to the UK to start working.
I know, I heard that.
Very hard.
Yeah,
on
they
it,
couldn't tell me though, so maybe you can find this out for me. They couldn't tell me if the European Omnipod will be compatible with the US Omnipod because as we were saying, in Europe and also in Canada, they measure blood sugar differently than in the US.
Yeah,
and so although we're coming with a 1 year supply of pods, I thought, what if something breaks, or what if her PDM breaks or something? And like, what if I just need a part? Is it possible I could go to the European Omnipod and just get a part if I need it? But they couldn't tell me if everything's going to be compatible or not.
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that that new PDM that's going to be out pretty soon, as soon as the FDA is done fiddling with it and looking at it, it's going to be really inexpensive. So I don't know that it would be cumbersome for you to have an extra one. Because it's basically just going to be an Android phone shell. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's the reason they switched to it partly is so that they can make, upgrades and move innovation along quicker. But it's also because it's not going to really cost anything. It's possible, Michelle, that by the time I come back to edit this episode and put it out, I'll be able to say something at the end that people would really like to hear. It
would just be interesting to know if they'll be compatible. I guess my question would be, if they measure blood sugar differently, do those pods talk differently to the PDM in
or
Europe
is it just a setting and when you set it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like
it's
you
an
choose
interesting
English or
question.
But nobody knew there.
But anyway, it'd be nice to know if they would be a resource for us at all here. But anyway, but that's why we come with a year's worth of stuff, so that if we need, start to run low on something, hopefully we can make a plan before we've run out, because we have the whole year. And then I know, like, we have Dexcom, and they also were able to help us get a year's supply of stuff. We've done that with them twice now. That was not quite as smooth of a process as with Omnipod, but I now have a really nice lady. I won't say her name, but there's a really nice lady at Dexcom now who knows me very well and who I work with her exclusively now on doing our orders, because when you want a whole year's worth of stuff, you just can't go through the normal channels typically. So with Omnipod, that was surprising. I didn't have to ask for a supervisor or talk to anybody in charge to get my order to go through. So that was awesome. Usually, though, it takes several weeks of calling and finally finding someone at the top of the food chain who knows the right overrides and can help me. Because our insurance is not the problem. They know we're overseas and they will help us navigate everything. The problem is usually the provider not understanding this weird scenario that we're in and knowing that it will be okay, your bill will be paid, our insurance will work with you.
I gotcha.
So
that's interesting. Well, is there anything, because you had some I feel like you had specific thoughts, and I know I held you back by not giving you things that I wanted to talk about, but this was a really good conversation. I think it was because we left it loose like that. So I am sorry.
You're fine. No. I was just wondering. I just like to be prepared.
I know. And I like you not to be prepared so we can chat.
Oh, thank you.
I think it worked out really well, actually. But so, no, I just want to make sure that if you have any nuggets about being overseas or about travel in general that I didn't ask you about or we didn't get to, that I don't want to leave them out. Is there anything that you've learned along the way that you think people would really benefit from knowing?
I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty big question. I think don't be afraid to travel. Don't be afraid to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. We certainly were not ready to even drive to Michigan for my cousin's wedding after Winnie was diagnosed, our daughter.
Right.
So because she got diagnosed in August, and there was a wedding, I think, in October, but we got Winnie's pump in September, right? So we had the diagnosis in August, then we got a pump in it was September, October, something like that, and then this wedding was happening in October, and we were not ready at all for a long road trip at that point. We just didn't feel comfortable. And then you're also dealing with cake and desserts and all these things, that can feel really overwhelming when you don't have a package in front of you and you're newly diagnosed, and you're trying to guess, and you're like, I don't even know how my kid's body reacts to these things. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, just being comfortable to travel once you're ready to. And that's different for everybody, but I think, you can't be afraid to go somewhere. I know I have friends here who are from the Czech Republic who will not go anywhere with their kid on a plane because they're too afraid. But they will go places by car, but they will not fly anywhere. And I'm hoping they will change their minds someday, because I think they're gonna miss out on so much if they limit themselves that way.
What are their fears about the plane?
I don't know.
Like the big, crashing to the side of a mountain fears, or
no. I think it has to do more with access to supplies and going to places that are so far away that they feel like they couldn't go to the pharmacy and get what they needed. And honestly, I don't know, if you were to be someone who was from Europe with European insurance and to travel to the U.S., for example, I think I would be kind of scared, because if you ran out of insulin and you didn't have an insurance policy that someone took there, I think you would be kind of screwed.
No one would help you.
I think it's easier to go the other way. It's easier to have U.S. insurance and go into Europe.
Yeah. Because
things are cheaper. So I think for them it's just they travel to places, really close by where they know that how the game works, and they know that they can still get supplies easily.
I just imagine the fear of being somewhere, being a foreigner, and being in America, and just having someone from America looking and go, "You're not American. This doesn't count. Go away." And having that fear of somebody can just discount you just because you're not speaking English or from America or whatever it ends up being. But I don't know that that's an unreal fear. I would feel that. And I have to say too, in the reverse, being American, I totally feel and it's probably a completely pompous and unreal thing, but I feel like I could just go anywhere and be me and it'll be fine. And I don't know that other people get to feel that way all the time. And that's...
no, that's pompous and unreal. Yeah.
And I know it is, but
we keep a low profile where we are. We don't want to call attention to our
your Americanness.
we try to keep a pretty low profile, and we try to blend in and be respectful of the culture here.
Yeah, but I'm saying generally speaking, I was kind of putting it on me for funny, but I think generally speaking, Americans have that feeling it's everything works for us usually. So when I go somewhere else, I want it to work for me. I mean, we've all been on vacation and seen somebody stomping and going nuts, and you're like, what's wrong? I asked for a drink 10 minutes ago and it's not back yet. I'm like, really? That's what's going wrong? But you have that feeling everything's so automatic and it just works here. You know what I mean? You want something, you get it. It's within reach of you normally. If you have a problem, there's someone to complain to. There's a system, there's a system in place that makes your complaint something they have to listen to. And it's just our lives are set up really well here. I don't know how much people could appreciate that there's other places in the world where that might not be the case.
I think they are set up well. I just think it's really expensive.
Yeah. Oh, no, of course.
The hard part is the expense of it. Because I think, in Minneapolis, when we go to the endocrinologist, our appointments go relatively quickly. We have a scheduled time, and we get in usually on time, and it's pretty fast. But here, it's you kind of are it's like a cattle call almost, I guess, a little bit. But it's on the flip side, it's so affordable. And if you have an emergency, they'll see you more quickly. But if it's just a regular, diabetes checkup, it's very different. It takes a lot more time, So I think we interact with, maybe 4 different people when we go to a diabetes appointment. So there will be someone who takes Winifred's height and weight. And then we go to a different area where someone downloads all the information from her pump and from her Dexcom, and then we go to a different area where someone pricks her finger and does her A1C, and we don't get the A1C immediately. We don't get the results for like 2 weeks.
Oh.
And also, it's not just like a little drop on a test strip. They take like a vial of blood. So they do a big finger stick and take a lot of blood, and then you don't get the results right away. So it's not even really gratifying that, oh, you stuck my finger and look at all that blood. You know, then you have to wait to find out what they did with all that blood. And then you go to meet with the diabetologist. So
and he's got he or she has all that information, and then you kind of compile it there and to make decisions and talk. Yeah,
like he gets all the data from the Dexcom and the pump, and he doesn't get the A1C right away. You know, he finds out when we find out what the A1C is. But
if my A1C doesn't come in the room before I'm 5 minutes into the actual visit, I'm like, oh, this is taking forever. But you know what?
Yeah, but it's different. And that's how I think that's like part of the reason that that the cost is so much lower, and I appreciate that. You know, I think it's hard coming from a system where we get everything so immediately, like you said. But I think I really appreciate the fact that people can afford to take care of themselves in
no matter system. What. And what you're really describing is pace of life and expectation. Like here, right? I work really hard most of the hours of my life. I come home, I clean something, eat something, pass out, get up and do it again. When I go to the doctor, I needed to go quick, because I got to get back to my fast-paced life. In Prague, I'm imagining life's not as fast-paced. It's okay if something takes longer. And if it eats up a little more of my time, it doesn't matter because I don't have to run back to my rat race job to make enough money to pay for it to begin with. So it is an expectation about like life balance, I guess.
It is, and I think it's also an understanding of how the system works and being prepared for it. You know, like the first appointment we went to, we weren't prepared for the wait time, so now I bring a coloring book for Winifred, or I bring something for myself to do.
And my husband, is the coloring book for you?
He broke his elbow while he was here in our first year and had to have surgery here, and that was a really interesting experience. And he had some of the same kind of wait times at his appointments, and at the first appointment he went to, he didn't know how long the wait time would be, and so he had to go to the bathroom, and he waited because he was afraid that he was going to leave for the restroom and they would call his name. And now he will go with a book if he has to go, you know, for an appointment like that, because he knows that it'll be a wait. So I think it's also, you need to understand how the system works, and it took us a little while to learn that because we definitely were frustrated in the beginning, you know, not understanding, because they don't tell you things that for them are a given. They don't explain to you, okay, your appointment is at 9:15, but you're probably going to wait 30 minutes before they call your name.
Right. And you know, go through they 4 just stations tell you the time,
and you're expected to know that this is the system, you know?
Well,
they give you the same rundown that they give to anybody else.
Yeah.
So, so it takes a little while, I think, to figure it out, but it's okay. And you only go to the endocrinologist, hopefully, you know, like 3 or 4 times a year. You're not having to go there every week, so it's okay. You can wait a couple times a year.
You'll be all right.
Not a big deal.
No, I feel that. That's a great thing, actually. I like the idea of being a little slower paced and not rushing constantly. So I have one last question. I've been wondering for the entire hour. Winifred, is it like from...
Winifred?
Yeah, where did you get the name?
Oh, she's named after my grandpa Frederick.
Gotcha.
If we had a boy, he would have been Frederick. But she was a girl. And so
it's not Winifred, it's Winifred.
Winifred.
Right. Okay. And then because I was thinking Wonder Years every time you said Winnie, I'm like, is this a Wonder Years thing? Like, did this poor kid get her name through Netflix? Like, that's what I was wondering if you were just a big fan of a television show or not. But you have a more thoughtful reason, which is more satisfying, by the way.
Yeah, it's got some family ties to it.
If she was a boy, would it have been Freddy for short?
Oh, I don't know.
You're not sure where
maybe.
Because when he's
we have friends now who call her Fred. You know, our friend Jake, he calls her Fred. He thinks it's really funny.
Does she?
So she might be Freddy. You know, she could be Freddy.
She could end up being Freddy.
Doesn't mean she can't be Freddy.
That'd be cool. You are doing amazing things. You put your family in a really unique situation, and then you shared it here. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. People should know that Michelle did not have Skype. She had to go to quite some distance to figure out how we could talk. We are on a major time difference. It's late in the afternoon where you are, and it's early in the morning where I am. And so this really worked out well. And then just as we were getting ready to do it, I kind of lost my voice to what I think is allergies. But I was really concerned I wouldn't talk. And so I didn't talk as much this episode, which for you, those of you who write me to tell me I talk too much, you must have been thrilled. And so this all worked out very well, but it had a lot of roadblocks, and I'm genuinely pleased that we got this one recorded. And I appreciate all the effort you put in on your side.
Oh, it was nothing. No, thank you for the opportunity. I hope that there are people out there who are inspired to go travel or to go live somewhere new or to go, do something crazy, adventurous,
The diabetes really doesn't need to in any way impede you from doing any of the things that you can imagine.
No, absolutely not. You need to plan more, but I think once you have your planning done, you are good to go, ready for takeoff.
Very nice. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. Huge thanks to Michelle for coming on the show all the way from Prague to tell us about her life with type 1 diabetes and all the traveling she does. Get out there, people. Just go ahead. Go somewhere. She went to Prague. You can go anywhere. Thank you, Dexcom and Omnipod, for sponsoring the show. Please go to dexcom.com/juicebox or myomnipod.com/juicebox for more information. Those links are also available at juiceboxpodcast.com or in the links of your podcast app. There are show notes in there. Push some buttons. Try to figure it out. A quick thank you also to Dancing for Diabetes. Though their ad run is over for 2018, I sincerely appreciate everything they did for the podcast, and I hope that you all got a chance to check out Dancing for Diabetes. If you didn't, here's a freebie, Dancing for Diabetes. Go to dancing4diabetes.com to check it out. Elizabeth is doing amazing things there. It is totally worth checking into. Hey, you want to talk about what's coming up for the rest of December? Let's do that real quick, shall we? I actually have it written down in front of me. And for those of you who know me, you might know that me writing anything down is a fairly incredible act. On December 18th, you'll be hearing from Anthony Anderson from ABC's Blackish and To Tell the Truth. On December 20th, you'll be hearing a Q&A with Brett Christensen, the new COO of Omnipod. He'll be responding to all of my questions, as well as the ones you left on Facebook and Instagram for me to pass on to Omnipod. That's fun, right? It's going to be a long one. Nice, good, really get in there and ask a bunch of questions, let Brett answer them. It's going to be good times. And then on the 27th, I'll be speaking with Chris Rudin about exercise, how insulin works around weight gain, weight loss, all that kind of like stuff that, you wish you understood a little better. Chris really understands it, and he's going to be on to tell us more. Then after the first of the year, Season 5 of the Juicebox Podcast will begin. Last thing that I'd like to remind you about, if the podcast is helpful to you, please help it to grow by sharing it with someone else. It really is incredibly difficult. I can't afford advertising for the show, and so it is very word of mouth. You are the ones who help it grow. I really appreciate that you do that, and I just want to remind you to keep going because, I love it. And I want to keep doing it, and I want you to keep getting it. So share, share, share.